welcome to Vanadium. Continuing this week with my reading of my 2016 book, Break the Bastion. This week will be chapter 20, starting on page 152. This chapter is titled Dark Forces. The following morning, Morgan woke to the sound of grown men screaming outside. The commotion came from a crowd of men fighting right in front of their front window. The men were obviously drunk, hitting each other and rolling around on the concrete. When Morgan came downstairs, his father already had the front door open, yelling at the men to leave. "Get the hell out of here," Killian shouted. "You're ruining the neighborhood. Get a damn job like the rest of us." Killian's battle was considerably intimidating, and even though the men outside were drunk, they quickly abided and left. "They're bussing these people in all night," he told Morgan. "I don't know what's going on, but it's something rotten." Morgan noticed there was a fire engine red notice tacked to their front door. It read, "Notice of eviction." "What's this about?" Morgan asked, pulling the notice from the front door. "We're being evicted?" "Oh, that," said his father. "I'm dealing with it." "Are we getting kicked out?" "Don't ask me that again," Killian said, turning his attention to the street outside. "I said I'd figure it out." Down the block, rows of makeshift tents made up tarps were starting to bloom. Shopping carts filled with plump garbage bags bustled in a near traffic jam. Some of the people were drunk and lively, while others moved like monks. Both Morgan and his father stood astonished at the mysterious and growing population of homeless, just as another bus let some more off. The unnatural density of people clogged the roads and sidewalks, and neither the police nor any other authority even acknowledged the problem. Discussion had started around the neighborhood, but no one knew why it was happening or who was behind it. Morgan's father had a worried look, an unusual expression for him. He leaned against the frame of the doorway, staring at the commotion. "We should just get out of here," he said. Then he turned to Morgan, and his face turned graver. But where the hell would we go? The Bastion crowd bled all the way to Lucas's neighborhood that morning. As soon as he woke up, he found his mother standing in front of his bedroom window. She was staring down at the rowdy, aimless mob outside, but her mind seemed to be somewhere else. As soon as she noticed as Lucas's eyes were open, she asked him, "Where were you last night?" The planning necessary to form a lie was beyond Lucas, so soon after waking up. So he blurted out, "I was running. I went running last night." "Running?" "Yeah," Lucas went on. "I've been jogging a little to lose some weight. It's been making me feel better." "No, it hasn't," said his mother. "It's not making you feel better. It's killing you," she went on, sounding regretful, saying, "I've given up everything to make you better. I just don't understand why you would do this to me. Why this death wish?" "But Mom..." "No more running. Ever." "But Mom..." "Please don't make me dream up punishments for you, Lucas. I don't want to. I don't want to punish you, but believe me, I will." "I'm sorry," Lucas told her, lowering his head. "I'm sorry, Mom." Her expression turned vacant, like a latex mask. She locked onto his eyes, asking, "Is there anything else you need to tell me about your little trips at night? What else are you doing?" "Nothing, Mom. I've just been..." "Whatever you're doing," she said, "it isn't helping. You look so much worse to me. It looks like you're dying." "I don't feel..." "Do you want to die? To kill yourself trying to be different?" "No." "Your mother knows who you really are, baby. Don't forget that." Callista found her father drunk in his study that morning. He was just about to nod off when she stopped in to say goodbye before school. Strewn all over his desk were old family photos going back generations. His eyes were bloodshot and his eyelids were wilting down to his cheeks. Days' worth of black and gray beard covered his face and neck. "What are you doing up?" he asked Callista. "It's morning," she told him. "I'm going to school." Her father turned around in his chair and noticed the sunlight coming through the window. "So it is." He smiled like a man at a funeral. "I was up and lost track of time." "Are you going to talk to me, or just blow me off like usual?" He sighed. Something in his expression begged to confess, but his mouth stopped him. "I know how confusing this must be for you," he said. "I don't want you to worry." "Not worry?" she asked. "How can I not worry with you acting like this? How can I just accept you shutting me out of something that's obviously really important?" "I am shutting you out," he admitted, "but it's not what you think. I don't have a choice, honey." "How can you not have a choice? I don't understand." For a moment, her father's deliberation made it seem as though he was about to come totally clean. Then, even with exhaustion and alcohol, he still caught himself. Finally, in the gravest tone she had ever observed, he told her, "All I can say is that telling you will put us both in terrible danger." "Danger from what?" "Something is happening, baby," he told her. "I want you to know that it's going to be okay. I'm going to protect us." "Protect us from what?" "Dark forces," he answered. "The kind I didn't think existed. We're at war, and I don't mean the one on TV. That's all I can say. Really, it's all I know." "You're scaring me. I'm sorry you have to hear your father say this. I couldn't have imagined my father saying this to me. But it's time to be scared, Callie." Callista skipped school that day, and through Strix, told Morgan to meet her by the old tsunami watchtower. When he arrived, she was sitting on one of the graffiti-covered benches with her face covered in her hands. When he asked her what happened, she told him, "I think something is either wrong with my dad or wrong altogether. He's acting insane, talking about dark forces and war." "If it's any consolation," said Morgan, "my dad is acting weirder than usual, too. I guess it's going around." "Can you put your arms around me?" Morgan complied, sitting down next to her and tucking her under his arm. She let herself get swallowed up in his muscles and felt better. Then she put her head on his shoulder, telling him, "I don't want time to move anymore. I just want it to stay right now forever." "Me too," said Morgan. "I used to look forward to the future. Used to think about getting my brother and me out of my dad's house and living on our own. I could take care of him and cure him. We wouldn't have to be afraid anymore. I wish I could still think like that. But more and more, the future just scares me." Callista glanced over to their electromechanical owls, identical, and sitting next to one another like twins in a photograph. She asked Morgan, "What do you think Strix is?" "Our friend. Someone or something to watch over us." "Do you think he's supernatural?" Both their Strixes spoke up at the same time, saying, "There is nothing supernatural about us. We are a computational consciousness, much like you humans. However, we do not suffer from the physical and mental boundaries that you do." Morgan said to the owls, "Great, that really helps. Guys, are you trying to be confusing? Because you're doing a great job of it." Callista brought up Lucas, saying, "The other night, he seemed so different from the first time I met him. He even looks different." Morgan answered, "I think Strix is changing us all, whether we notice it or not." That night, Lucas waited for the sound of his mother snoring before he tiptoed out of the house for his run. It was well after midnight, and saltwater mist had drifted down from the Bastion over the city. The white noise of the waves crashing was broken by the growing crowd of Bastion homeless. Everyone not searching for their children was drinking, smoking, and hanging out of their tents. Right in front of his house, Lucas noticed a familiar fancy car. He immediately recognized the man standing beside the vehicle. Blaise Laurent was by himself, talking to someone Lucas couldn't see. It appeared the invisible party was abnormally tall, because Laurent had his head angled up while he spoke. The old man's hands moved like a wild orchestra conductor. Lucas approached, and Laurent failed to notice at first. The man was quite wrapped up in what appeared to be an entirely one-sided conversation. His pupils were dilated to the whites of his eyes. His stare moved around like something was circling him. "Are you okay?" Lucas interrupted him. "Dr. Laurent?" The old man froze for a moment, surprised to see the boy suddenly standing there. "My boy Lucas," he said. "I was hoping to see you tonight." Who were you talking to? Lucas asked him. Oh, said Laurence, glancing to the upper right side of the sky. I'm just an old man who sometimes talks to himself. He smiled and said, Out for a nightly run, I see. How have you been feeling? Much better, actually, said Lucas. I guess it's the exercise. Laurence's face twisted into a skeptical squint. Do you think that's what it is? He asked. I don't know, was all that Lucas could think to say. Blaise Laurence noticed Strix peeking out of Lucas's backpack. He gave the owl a friendly nod. I'm sorry to meet you like this, said Laurence. It's just that I don't keep a normal schedule with typical hours. There are times when I become quite the night owl, so to speak. They walked together along a stretch of the Bastion. Blaise Laurence kept looking at the wall with a mixture of admiration and perhaps sadness, like he was watching some distant scene from the past. With the night and the haze, the Bastion seemed to climb all the way to the moon. The most exciting part of being young, said Laurence, is that one doesn't know himself yet. You're still getting to know a stranger. I don't think I understand. Time shows us who we really are, said the old man. Take me, for instance. I was a kid with learning disabilities. No one thought I would be able to take care of myself, let alone become something important. But you're a genius, Lucas argued. You're always a genius. Genius, said Laurence. The word instilled with melancholy. It's the one thing you can't earn, but you pay for every day. What do you mean? I mean that you're like me. No, I'm not. I don't even do well in school, Laurence balked, saying, School? What nonsense. It's more of a concentration camp than a place to learn. I don't feel like a genius. You won't ever feel like one, but that doesn't change the facts. After a while, no one will be able to hold you back. Don't you see, Lucas? You're in a cocoon, and you're about to turn into a butterfly. Now nobody can stop you. That's why Strix chose you. During their walk, Lucas noticed that occasionally Laurence's eyes would wander, like he was watching something flying around him. To Lucas, the sky was empty except for the salt fog. When Laurence seemed to see something, his face took on a frightened blankness, like a mouse looking into the mouth of a viper. At one point at the end of their walk, Lucas asked him what was wrong. Laurence's reply was, My mind is both my best friend and my worst enemy. Just before Laurence left him, Lucas pointed out to the growing tent city on the streets. Do you know why they're being brought here? Laurence sighed, and his face looked like he was visiting an old, unpleasant memory. I think I do, he said. Lacrone? Lucas asked him. Balassi Lacrone? I know that name has something to do with what's happening. Is he behind all this? Laurence stood there for a moment, looking up at the ephemeral top of the wall. His hands came up to his temples, as though a strong headache had started. He coughed, and his head trembled on his neck. Forgive me, he said, as his body started to collapse. You better get running. Lucas, I'm afraid I must retire for the evening. I'll help you, Lucas told him, taking Laurence by the shoulder. You don't look well. I'll help you get home. You're a good lad, Laurence said, letting himself lean on the boy. The world hasn't sullied your gentle spirit. The old man's body suddenly went stiff. The trembling stopped, and he stood perfectly upright like a man half his age. It was as though another man had suddenly stepped into Laurence's body. The most profound change took place in the old man's expression. It took one from one of fatigue and weary understanding to something like a warrior in battle. Is something wrong, Dr. Laurence? Lucas asked him. Are you all right? Laurence smirked at him. Never better, he said. There seemed to be something very different in the old man's face. A younger and angrier collection of angles. Forgive me, Lucas. But what was it we were discussing? We were talking about Balassi Lacrone. And you wanted to know what he has to do with all of this. Who is he? Asked Lucas. It's like he's some kind of ghost. I'm afraid he is flesh and blood, said Laurence. Cold blood, but blood. My advice is just stay away from him. Stay away from the name even. Forget you heard it. Who is he? He's what happens when the world is too much for a man. I hate to use such terms, but one could say he went mad and he turned evil. It's a terrible thing to happen to a man. What does he want? Laurence took a deep breath and considered the question. After a moment, he looked squarely at Lucas, telling him, "A new beginning. But for that to happen, nothing can be left. He won't leave anything standing. The war, the Bastion, the whole sick country in between. Nothing left standing. It's the only way for the world to start again. Well, at least that's what Lacrone believes." "How do you know him?" "How does one know anyone?" Laurence asked. "We've crossed paths for years." "Why did he turn bad?" "The world broke his heart one too many times." When Morgan arrived home from school the following day, 2 city social workers were sitting on the couch in the living room. His father had dressed himself up in a collared shirt he had haphazardly tucked. He'd also shaven and wet his hair back. The 2 social workers, both middle-aged women who were friendly enough, stood up and shook Morgan's hand. "You must be the big brother," one of them said. "Your father has told us about how much you take care of Brian and how you've put both your lives on hold." Morgan was confused. He looked to his father, who was clearly putting on his perfect parent act. The man was forcing a smile so hard that it looked like it hurt the muscles in his face. "Go ahead, Tiger," he told Morgan. He never called him that. "Tell the good ladies here how hard it's been taking care of Brian." Morgan still had the look of befuddlement. He started to answer, "I love my brother. I like taking care of him." "Of course," said one of the social workers, as though she could see through him. "We know you love your brother, and your father loves his son." She cleared her throat before continuing. "Have you thought about letting someone else take care of him?" "No," said Morgan. "Haven't thought about it." "Well," she went on, "your father got in contact with us because he's concerned." "Concerned about what?" "You, Morgan," the social worker went on. "He's concerned about what Brian's illness is doing to you." "What?" He looked back at his father. "I don't understand." "We know that you've had some trouble in the past, fighting and whatnot. We also understand that you've had some issues at school, with grades and truancy." "I never had any issue," said Morgan. "It's my school that has the problem." The 2 social workers compared looks. Morgan's father told him, "Watch your mouth, boy. These folks are here to help our family." "The hell they are," said Morgan. "Excuse me?" said one of them. Morgan's father was doing his best not to detonate and slap his son across the face. He crossed his arms in a way that looked like he was trying to keep from hitting him. "Please, son," said his father, holding his teeth together. "There is no reason to treat these nice folks this way. Please do your best to be polite and behave. Please, for your family." "Morgan," one of the social workers addressed him, "we know how much you love your brother and you want to see him. We're just here to evaluate how his illness is progressing and where the best place might be for him." "He's not going to one of those concentration camps where you put poor people," said Morgan, crossing his arms. "You act like you're nice and you care, but I know where he'll end up. I may be just a kid, but I'm telling you, you're not taking my brother away. I don't care if you tell me it's best. It's not best, and it's not what's happening." Both social workers just looked at one another. "I apologize for him," said Morgan's father. "Been so much stress on him, on all of us. Listen, I appreciate you coming down here," he told the social workers. "We've met with Brian, and we have his medical report," said the older woman. "Once the office evaluates it, we'll be in touch to let you know if Brian is accepted into hospice." "Hospice?" Morgan shouted. "He's not dying, he's just sick." "Forgive my son," said his father. "He's very protective of his little brother." The social workers stood up, and one of them spoke to Morgan. "I promise that we won't move Brian unless that's what's best for him." His father's face clouded over when he heard that. The social workers, before they left, told Killian that the office would evaluate Brian's medical records and case to decide if hospice was appropriate. They would be in touch in a couple of days with the decision. As soon as the door closed behind them, Morgan and his father locked eyes like horns of battling elk. It appeared as though the quiet moment could immediately turn into a flurry of violent blows. However, nothing happened. Both men just stood there before Morgan just eventually went upstairs. Brian had been awake and had heard much of the exchange. The boy looked scared, but somehow fearless at the same time, like he was resigned to his fate. "It's okay," he told Morgan. "I can take care of myself." "Of course you can," Morgan smiled. "I'll just take every opportunity I can to pick a fight with that prick. He's going to be real mad, you know." "I know. I don't care." "I know what hospice means," said Brian, looking somehow brave. "It means I won't get better." "You're going to get better, I promise." "What about hospice?" "It's not happening," said Morgan. "I'm not going to let it happen. So there's no need talking about it, or worrying," he said, roughening up his brother's hair. Brian's face took on a sad, serious look. "Dad said something I don't understand," he said. "He came up here while he was drunk." "What did he say?" "He asked me if I ever wondered who my father was. I didn't understand. What does that mean?" "He was just 3 sheets of the wind out of it," said Morgan. "He doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't worry." "I was thinking the other night," Brian went on, "even though I'm so sick and my own father doesn't want me, I'm still so lucky." Why lucky?" "Because of my older brother," Brian said. "I have such a good big brother. It makes up for not having a real mom or dad." "No, it doesn't," Morgan told him. "I wish it did." While doing push-ups that evening, Lucas heard someone singing outside his bedroom window. A man's voice, or perhaps a boy's, hummed a tune along with the words, "I'm sorry, Lucas. So sorry, Lucas." When he got to the window, Nox Jabarosa peered up from the alley below. Looking even more feral than during their last encounter, he was covered in mud, dust, leaves, and branches. He had strands of red seaweed wrapped around his neck like salty pearls. The whites of his eyes seemed electrical, like his madness was creating its own light. "Lucas," he said, "it's me, Nox. Don't be afraid. Can you talk?" "What do you want?" Lucas asked him from the window. "To say I'm sorry." "It's okay, Nox. I'm not angry with you. I'll be fine." "No, it's not okay," said Nox, sounding almost sad for a moment. "I never knew why I wanted to hurt you. I just knew that I did. Now I know why. What's happened has shown me. They've shown me. Strix has shown me. The reason I wanted to hurt you was because of how alive you are." "I don't know what that means, Nox." "It's what I, your mother, and everyone else want to snuff out. We don't even realize we're doing it, Lucas. I'm so sorry." "Don't be, Nox. I always knew you were in even more pain than me." For a moment, Nox's eyes shimmered in a way that made it look like there were tears. He told Lucas, "So many people are dead, Lucas. They're not really here. They're zombies. They're just wandering ghosts. That's why when they die, they don't really die." "What do you mean, Nox?" "Mr. Crone doesn't need them. He's taking the ones he needs for the plan. Others, he's just taking them to keep them out of the way. Do you know what he's going to do with them?" Lucas shook his head. "He's going to drown them," said Nox. So they can't hold the new world back." "What is this new world, Nox?" "You're going to see soon," Nox said. "You've got one more monster to go before." "Before what, Nox?" Nox raised his forefinger to his mouth, like the answer meant revealing a secret too soon. "Strix will be so angry if I tell you," he said. "He'll hurt me in my head." Then Nox backed up and disappeared into the back corner of the alley. Up the hill, Callista heard her father talking on the phone to someone in his office. There was something in his tone of voice that made the tiny hairs on her arms stand up. All the confidence and strength had been wrung out of his words. He sounded like a man pleading to an archangel. She listened at the door. "Mr. Lacrone," he said, "I assure you I'm making all the arrangements. Please don't worry." After listening for a moment, he went on saying, "Please, I don't know how you know about that night, but please, Mr. Lacrone, please don't speak about that night. I'll do anything you say. Please just let me forget what happened." Callista pushed the door open, and her father saw her standing there. "No, Miss Lacrone," he went on to the caller. "Of course, we are maintaining all levels of secrecy." After that, the caller hung up. "That was the man you're scared of?" Callista asked him. "Wasn't it?" Her father suddenly looked like his entrails were spilling onto the hardwood. He considered how to answer before telling her. It was. "Why are you so afraid of him?" "I'm going to tell you some things, Callie. But you'll have to promise me that you won't tell anyone else, and you won't ask me anything more. Do you promise?" "I guess." "You guess?" "All right, I promise." "Balassi Lacrone," said her father, "don't even speak those words to anyone. That's how serious this is." He poured himself a drink with shaky hands. "I've never met him," he said. "The strange thing is that no one has. He gives all his orders over the phone or through other people. No one even knows what he looks like. He's even taken over my whole company, most of the companies, most of the government. What does he want?" "I'm not sure entirely," her father told her. "No one knows the whole plan but him. I only know my part. The only thing I know for sure is that it's nothing good." "How has he taken over so much, so quickly?" "No one knows exactly. His finances are bottomless, and he seems to know everything about everyone. He knows their secrets. That's all the power anyone needs." "Do you have secrets, Daddy? Is that why you're doing what he says?" Her father took another sip of scotch and stared up at the ceiling. When his eyes met hers again, she could see the depth of fear running through him. He looked like a frightened animal in a trap. Eventually, he told her, "Balassi Lacrone is a monster. I always told you there were no such thing as monsters, but I was wrong." His face turned a shade of red, and he started to weep. "What he's made me do," he cried. "What he's threatened me with. What he's created." She hugged him and patted him on the head until he stopped crying. The sound of her father sobbing made her lightheaded. The man only rarely cried, and never before like this. As Callista held him, a bubble of anxiety welled up inside of her. The man that had ushered in her life could no longer be the indestructible Bastion. Callista went upstairs and grabbed Strix off her dresser. She sat him down on her carpet and took a seat across from him. Before the owl could even light up, she started talking. "Strix, I need answers," she said. "That is indeed our purpose," said Strix, as his electroluminescent feathers sparkled. "What sort of answers do you need from us? Who the hell is Balassi Lacrone, and why is he involved with my dad?" "My current database lists Balassi Lacrone as the owner of Divinex Corporation." "What else?" "This is indeed peculiar," said Strix. "We have no data regarding the man's birth, education, or family. No information is available to account for Mr. Lacrone prior to the war." "What does that mean? Did he suddenly just appear and buy up everything in sight?" "I'm sorry, Callista," said Strix. "All other information from Mr. Lacrone is related to his financial stake in Divinex. I'm afraid we can't be of any more help." "Where can I find him?" "That may prove difficult, Callista." "Why?" "The man doesn't appear to have a residence." "What do you mean? Where does he live, then?" "Unknown." "Who would know where to find him?" "Our creator, Blaise Laurence." "I want to talk to him tonight, and I won't take no for an answer." "We see there is no reasoning with you, Callista. You can find Dr. Laurence at the Museum of the Future this evening." "I thought that place closed down years ago." "You can find him there," Strix went on. "Dr. Laurence is well acquainted with Mr. Lacrone." Thank you very much. That was Chapter 20 I'll be following up with chapter 21, titled Museum of the Future. Thank you very much. This is Vanadium. Vanadium.